Evan Dawson with you on WXXI News this afternoon. Great to have you. Tech issues, just a few of those. We'll get those figured out, but it's great to have you on this Tuesday afternoon. And our connection this hour was made on a trip to Greenland. Now, in the past year, Americans have heard more about Greenland than probably ever before. President Trump is determined to acquire Greenland for our own purposes, he says. He talks often about Greenland's valuable minerals, its strategic location. I almost never hear him talk about Greenland's people, who, by the way, have said they don't want to be Americans. 57,000 people live in Greenland. You can fly from Rochester to Nuuk on certain days, that's the Greenland capital, for about $1,500. The weather in Greenland is warmer than Rochester by quite a bit for the past month. This Saturday, the high in Rochester is 9 degrees. In Nuuk, it's 31. We can talk about Greenland as a thing to possess, or a commodity, a strategic asset, or we can get to know it better by talking to people who have spent time there. And that's what we aim to do this hour. My guests include Dennis Defebaugh, who is a Guggenheim Fellow, Professor Emeritus in RIT School of Photographic Arts and Sciences, lived in Greenland for about a year and a half, and has a lot to say about it. Welcome back. Welcome to the program for the first time, Dennis. Great to have you.
Thank you very much.
And welcome back to Lauren Petraka, a freelance photojournalist who also has spent some time in Greenland. Not as much time as Dennis, but that's all right. It's not a scoreboard here. It's great to see you in person. Nice to have you back here.
Yes, thank you.
So I want to start by asking Dennis, how does one come to live in Greenland for a year and a half? What happened?
Well, I received a National Science Foundation award to do social sciences in Greenland, photography per se. I worked with two social scientists in this project and a historian who was Greenlandic. So two of us were from the United States, one from Denmark and one from Greenland. And so it took a year and a half to do that project.
To do the work. And when was this, by the way?
2016, 2017.
Okay. And Lauren, you were in Greenland for a couple of weeks back in 2021?
Yep, I was there in 2021 in August. Yeah.
And what was the reason for your trip?
I, at the time, was working as a staff photographer at the Post and Courier, which is the daily newspaper in Charleston, South Carolina. And a reporter there named Tony Bartlemy, he got a grant from the Pulitzer Center to do a story about how ice melt in Greenland is impacting sea level rise in Charleston.
Yeah, listeners may recall, there's a paleoclimatologist at the University of Rochester, Vas Petrenko, who we're hoping to have on the program sometime in the coming weeks, who has led a team that has done work there. And it's really important, hard climatological work. But obviously the kind of work that Dennis and Lauren do, very different. You are many things, Dennis. You are not a paleoclimatologist, I don't think.
No.
But let's start with a little bit about what you think the misperceptions are that Americans might have. We heard President Trump last month 3 different times in Davos refer to Greenland as Iceland, and then the White House said, no, he meant to say that because it's very icy there. It's all ice in Greenland, which, I guess we can't just admit that we misspoke anymore. But what do you think people get wrong when they think about Greenland, first and foremost?
Well, it is. It really kind of upsets me when I hear people call Greenland Iceland, and I've heard it a lot. So it's not unusual, but when a president does it, that's pretty unusual. But what was the question?
So when you do when Americans do think about Greenland, when you tell folks, yeah, I spent time in Greenland, was there for a year and a half, now they're hearing all this geopolitical intrigue. What do you think people get wrong when they think about Greenland?
Well, they think, for one, it's always, boy, it's really cold there, isn't it? Isn't there a lot of snow and ice? And there is, but I don't think it's any colder than Rochester.
No, in fact, for most of this winter, it's been warmer than Rochester.
Yeah, and when I was there, I've been in temperatures 25 below zero, and I still felt colder in Rochester when it was 5 below.
Probably just how we're conditioned, I think.
Right. Maybe the clothing I was wearing is a little different too, but I think that's the main thing. And really the relationship between Iceland and Greenland, I just don't think people know anything about Greenland.
Yeah, and we're going to talk this hour about what our guests just, how they interacted with the people. Dennis has some photography that we're going to share if you're watching on YouTube, and some of it kind of feels like a bygone era when the United States-Greenland relationship was probably better than it is right now. We'll talk about that. Lauren, when you were getting ready to go to Greenland 5 years ago, what did you know about Greenland before you went?
I really embarrassingly did not know a lot. I think I knew what a lot of Americans knew, which, in high school we learned, the fun fact, like, did you know that Greenland's actually ice and Iceland's actually green? And I think that's, basically the nugget of knowledge a lot of people have. I think people have more knowledge now since it's been in the news so much, but I really didn't know a lot about it before I went. When I found out I was going, I only had a couple weeks to prepare. So I was just Googling anything I could to find out more about it.
And you went in August, you said?
Yeah.
So I'm just very curious about what the weather was like when you were there.
Yeah, it kind of depends where you are, but where I was, it was generally like in the 60s. So I had a light jacket on.
So it was lovely.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, it was an escape from the heat of South Carolina at the time. So
very different.
yes.
And Dennis, you spent a more extended time, and in fact, you're going to go back to Greenland. Is that right?
Yeah, the end of this month.
Okay. Oh, the end of this month.
Right. And I
Okay.
was there this summer in August, September. It was beautiful. Every day the sun was up, beautiful blue skies. I actually, by the end of my stay there, I was sick of the sun and sick of the light all day long. And I wanted more atmosphere for photography and
Sure.
but yeah, it was beautiful there the whole time.
Yeah, this time of year, I imagine it quite dark a lot. But is that right?
Well, December would be
The
dark,
peak of it, yeah.
24 hours in the north, and but now it's probably a little darker than here, but not a lot.
And when you're there in August, you had a lot of sunlight.
Yeah, the sun never went down when I was there. So it actually made it really hard not to work as a photographer because it's like golden hour for 12 hours. And you're like, I need to be out photographing in this. So yeah, it was really cool. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it.
How were the people that you got to know in Greenland?
Yeah, it is just such a different way of life than we have here. It was really amazing to experience. And I only got to experience it for 2 weeks. But the people were kind to me. It was at the time when I went, it was difficult to communicate with a lot of Greenlanders because Greenlandic is their language, and it was not in Google Translate at the time that I went. I think it was just added to Google Translate in 2024. So, it wasn't, at times we had someone who could translate for us, but it's, as Dennis and I could talk about, it's so expensive to be there that we had a limited budget and couldn't afford a translator the whole time. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Danish people there, so communicating with them was obviously easy, but with the Inuit, it was more difficult. But they were very responsive to my presence there. Whenever there was a day I went to like a bunch of boats and asked to photograph them fishing, and I would just kind of hold up my camera and, do one of these, and we'd communicate that way. And they were always more than willing to let me photograph them.
I mean, it was obviously 5 years ago, a very different time in geopolitics. So I don't know how much conversation you had, if any, about what they thought of the United States at the time.
No, yeah, our focus was really on ice melt and the impact on South Carolina. So it wasn't really about the culture there, although like the reporter didn't talk much about the people living there, but I wanted to make sure in my photographs that I showed what it's like to live there, because I think it's important for people to see that people call this place home and that they have a history of traditions and an important way of life there that we don't really experience here.
When you say the way of life is very different than we're used to, what's the biggest difference?
I mean, just seeing how people live off the land there still. They hunt for their food by sled dog, sometimes by snowmobile, fishing. They have to hunt, they have to hunt for their food. Some people, I'm sure not everyone does, but some people hunt for their food and freeze it for the winters, and they depend a lot on the land and the health of the land there.
Dennis, when you're there for an extended time, what were your observations about the biggest differences in ways of life?
I think a lot of what Lauren talked about, the hunting, their the respect for the environment and being in the environment all the time. And one of the places I lived, we didn't have running water. There was a community shower. There was just a little heater in the middle of the little house that I had. But there's a lot, I think there's probably more similarities than differences. They're concerned with, making a living, putting food on the table. They have big screen televisions. I think everybody had bigger screen TV than I have. And they all have cell phones. And this is in very remote areas as well.
Not just the capital.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. And I was probably between 300 and 400 miles north of the capital.
Wow.
And in a very remote area. But people knew what was going on in the world. And, another thing that I realized is like the kids, they were running around all the time. They have to be in at a certain time. There was nothing like that. There was no worry about them doing something or being in a dangerous situation. If they're in a dangerous situation, it's probably because of them doing it themselves. Like there was one day there was this really steep cliff in the middle of winter, and these kids found this door, and they were going to sled down on the door, and they were smart enough to send the door down first before they went down, and the door broke up into 1,000 pieces. And I thought, well, they're not going to be sled riding down this cliff. And then they started going down just on their butts or head first. And I don't know how they survive the things they do, but they're fearless. So, yeah, the kids are really something else there.
I'm thinking about kids in this context because last month the New York Times covered a series of protest marches, mainly in Greenland's capital of Nuuk, but also in a couple of other towns. And people were demonstrating against a United States, essentially possible invasion, takeover, purchase, whatever. And one woman talked to the New York Times and said that, that she's in her 40s, that she has young children, but her parents also live with them. And she said, if the United States comes, we're leaving. I won't have my children be part of an occupied country or an occupied territory. Greenland is an autonomous region or nation within Denmark. And she said, we won't stay. But she also said, I don't think my parents are too elderly. I don't think that they could move. I think that they would have to stay and endure whatever happened. And, I'm sure the White House would say that's alarmist, that's ridiculous. Because, no one wants to hurt them. Trump's talking about giving everyone in Greenland $100,000, which I wonder what they would say about that. But they were thinking about their kids. And as much as you can describe growing up in a place like that and feeling fearless, these are parents with the same kind of concerns for their kids as we have in any part of the world. And the expression, every reporter I saw who was covering these demonstrations, I didn't see anybody who talked to parents who said, yeah, I want my kids to grow up an American. I mean, I just didn't see it. Does that surprise you now, Dennis, having been there 10 years ago and seeing what it was like 10 years ago and now what the relationship's like? Any surprise there?
No, not at all. I mean, they probably have more animosity towards the United States in the last 6 months than they did in the last 50 years. But what people would tell me is, first of all, they don't want to be part of Denmark either.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be their own country.
Yep.
And they were saying that if the United States takes over, then now we're occupied by a whole new country, new set of laws. And, there's so much uncertainty in that type of situation.
Did you talk about this last summer? You said last
This
summer. You were there.
summer.
Yeah, this past
yes,
summer?
Yeah.
Yeah. How much were people talking about it?
Not a lot.
Okay.
But they all knew. They all felt that way. You know, it would come up. Sometimes I would ask questions about it, but it was always the same answer.
In any sense, were you embarrassed to talk about it? I mean, was it strange?
No, I don't like talking about it,
Right.
but it's part of the situation right now. And
Um,
everybody's very nice, it's not, I'm comfortable with everyone. And I'm sure with Lauren, it's the same thing. People are very friendly. They're not looking at us, oh, there's the Americans.
Well, to your point, Dennis, in the last 6-12 months, a lot has changed with the American-Greenland relationship.
Mm-hmm.
When Lauren was there 5 years ago, there was no reason for it to be a bad relationship. I mean, I can't even understand what would have been. It wasn't even a topic of conversation. You said, right? It's not like people were.
In the first administration, Trump's administration, there was talks about Greenland, and so when I was there, as soon as I said I was American, that was generally the first thing that people said to me. It was
Wow.
kind of make a joke about it.
Even 5 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. But it was a joke at the time. It didn't seem like a serious, like something that was seriously going to happen. At least that's not how they portrayed it to me. So I wonder how much that's changed now. I'm sure it's changed.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Dennis, when you're there last summer, are people joking about it or is it more serious?
No, it's serious, definitely. And I wasn't there during the demonstrations, and it really, this, within a month or two, it's gotten very bad, and you don't see Greenlanders protesting like that. They're very easygoing. So obviously, it has a lot of meaning to them to get out and protest.
We're talking to two people who've spent time in Greenland. Dennis Defebaugh, who's a Guggenheim Fellow and Professor Emeritus in RIT's School of Photographic Arts and Sciences. Lauren Petraka, a freelance photojournalist. Questions, comments, if you want to email the program, connections@wxxi.org, connections@wxxi.org. If you're watching on YouTube, you can join the chat there. You can call us toll-free at 844-295-TALK. It's 844-295-8255. Michael wrote in to ask, how is the healthcare in Greenland? So Dennis was there longer. Hopefully you didn't need the healthcare system when you were there for 2 weeks, Lauren.
No,
You did not.
luckily not.
Okay. Dennis?
It's not very prevalent. I mean, everyone has health insurance. It's a national health insurance. I know a friend of mine was going to Denmark for cancer treatment the last time I was there. And yeah, the health situation's very good as long as there are doctors around. The place I lived in that was very remote in Islorsvit, there was no doctor. The closest doctor was like 90 miles away by boat or helicopter, if you could get a helicopter there. So if there was an emergency, there wasn't any easy connect. But I think for the most part, the health care is actually pretty good there.
It's under the Danish umbrella, their system?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's universal health care.
Yeah.
But in the remote areas, you're going to go a long way. I mean, look, in this country, if you live in rural areas,
Yeah, it'd be the same.
losing access pretty fast here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that was Michael's question. And is it George? No, Greg. Greg emailed to ask, are there grocery stores? Do Greenlanders, do they have basic markets to go grab food? Because you talked about hunting. Lauren, you're smiling over there. Yes?
Yes, they do have grocery stores. At least I was in the town of Ilulissat. They had 2 grocery stores, I think.
Yeah, pretty nice grocery stores.
Yeah, they
too.
were nice. And I also got to go into their school, which was beautiful. It was gorgeous. Really, really nice.
What level school?
I think it was K through 12. It's a very small
Sure.
town. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ilulissat is where you were.
Yes.
Did you spend any time in the capital, Nuuk?
I didn't. Didn't get to go to Nuuk. I went to Ilulissat and then also Kangerlussuaq.
Okay. And were you in the capital at all, Dennis?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, 57,000 people in Greenland. I mean, probably half or more in the capital, I would assume.
Well, the capital's really growing. It's probably one of the few places in Greenland that is growing. When I was there were about 15,000. Now there's about 18,000, and they're figuring there'll be 20,000 before long.
Okay. Is there talk about climate change among the people of Greenland and about how it's affecting them?
Not so much, but I hear a lot of it now since I'm going back in the winter. The one thing I wanted to do was to go back and be able to walk on the frozen fjords, because that's where everything's happening in the winter, because, hunters are out, the fishermen are out, they're fishing, they have holes in the ice for fishing, and it's just, it extends the land so much. Like, the land for the most part is rock and mountains and very rugged areas to walk. In the winter, you can walk on the frozen fjords, and people, there's one photograph that I sent you of a husband and wife pushing a baby carriage on the ice, and that was their daily walk with the child.
I think that we're looking at it right
Yeah.
now on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, what an extraordinary image that is.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, you don't see that anywhere in the world. That is remarkable. So yeah, it's two people with a baby carriage
Yeah.
on a vast snow ice landscape. Amazing.
So, I think it's pretty bad what's happening. So this year,
In terms of climate change.
yes,
Yeah.
people, I just talked to a person 2 days ago that said this is the worst winter they've ever had. There's no snow and there's no ice. And I talked
The
to,
worst is that things aren't even freezing. Probably. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe not all the way
yeah.
through. Yeah,
and
amazing.
another person in Umanak, where I'm going to be staying, because that was taken in Umanak, the one we just looked at. And that fjord is not frozen.
Wow. Yeah, that's. Can you even imagine in Greenland of all places? But as I said, I've been watching the weather in Nuuk once in a while out of curiosity. They've been warmer than Rochester every time I've checked them all winter long. Now we're having a very cold winter, but wow. We're going to get back to that a little bit more on that subject in just a second. Let me grab Sally in Rochester on the phone. Hi, Sally. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I have a couple of questions for Dennis. Dennis, I know you've got a great photography book out on Greenland. Can I buy it locally, and would you tell me where? And number two, what's the food like in Greenland? Are they eating just like Rochester? Do they have a special kind of interesting diet that we might want to learn more about? And how do they shop for groceries?
Well,
My answers off there.
lot there's okay. So let's start. Let's start with the first one here. This is the book she's talking about.
Yes.
It's called North by Nuuk: Greenland After Rockwell, Kent, from Dennis Defbaugh. So there you go.
And you can buy it through the RIT Press.
So you can still get it.
Yeah, just go online, RIT Press.
It is beautiful. Dennis knows what he's doing. Lauren can probably verify that.
Yes.
Talented man there.
Very talented.
And we're going to show you in our second half hour. We'll show you more if you're on YouTube of more of the images. But RIT Press is the answer to
Right.
that for that one. If you want to check out more of
Yeah,
that.
and eBay and, the usual, Amazon.
And she's also asking, yeah, I mean, like the food. What are they eating? what was your diet for a year and a half? Lauren, you're there
I'll
in
chime in
August
too.
for a couple weeks. What was your diet there?
Well, I have a fun fact. I was actually mostly vegan during my visit.
Aha! And you came out after
not-
2 weeks not vegan anymore.
Well, I ate fish at the time, so luckily.
A
So I
pescatarian,
ate all
yeah.
fish, which they boil their fish. So I was pretty sick of boiled fish by the end of it. But they eat muskox, so muskox burgers were on the menu a lot. What else?
Well,
Reindeer?
Seal,
Yes.
whale, reindeer. Reindeer is so good.
I regret not experiencing
Yeah,
it.
it's very good. I was in Asiat, which is a small town near Ilulissat, and I was walking along with a friend, and we came to this stand, and the person was selling whale meat, and basically it was kind of sushi at the time, and he had some small pieces, and I asked him what it was. He said it was whale, and no, like Lauren said, very few people speak English there, so, and I don't speak Greenlandic, but we somehow communicate. So he cut a piece for me, and it was almost frozen because it was probably 10 below when we were walking around, and I had it. It was the best sushi I think I've ever eaten, and it wasn't prepared sushi at all. And so we had a couple pieces together, and it was very, very good. But there are not a lot of vegetables because you only get them in the summer.
Do their markets or the supermarkets have any?
Yeah.
I imagine they'd be expensive.
They are. There was, in one supermarket, there was a tiny little watermelon that had a big rotten spot on it, and it was like $8.
Yeah. A lot of their vegetables are shipped in too.
Yeah.
So when you go to the grocery store, it's, it looks like they're on the last day, or you kind of got to eat them right away.
Okay. Muskox burger. You have any of that, Dennis?
No, I always had muskox that was roasted, and I wish I had the burgers. They were
How was roasted muskox?
I hate to say it, but they always overcook it, so it was dry.
Okay.
And it looked beautiful, when you sliced it.
You'd have prepared it a little differently. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have reindeer?
I had reindeer a number of times.
Is that just like good venison?
Yeah, it's great. It's better than venison.
Better.
It's more like elk, I would say.
Now, see, come on.
elk.
Give us the culinary difference. Elk, reindeer,
Well,
venison.
I think it's not as gamey,
Okay.
maybe as
Yeah.
deer is, but
I like how you say that like most people have had elk.
That's kind of what stopped me. I said, oh, it's like elk as a comparison. Thank you, Dennis.
anytime.
But
I've eaten a lot of wild game, but the fish is amazing. It was funny. My friend Benjamin, it was my birthday actually, and he was fishing. He took a long line out into the bay, like not even 100 yards, and dropped it into the bay. It had probably 5-6 hooks on it, and then he came back and he waited 2 hours or so, and then he started pulling the line in, and every hook had fish on it, and he had, I think, 3 or 4 wolffish, which are about 3 or 4 feet long, big teeth. They their heads look like a pit bull. And
it's a wolf fish?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they call it a wolffish for the teeth, but anyways, he knew it was my birthday, and he ended up boiling the fish for me. And we sat down, 4 of us sat down at the table, and there was a pile of fish in the center of the table, and I had a fork and everybody else had a fork, and we just ate off of the center of the dish.
I'm looking at a wolffish right now. Yeah. Everybody listens, Googling a wolffish. Okay, I see where it gets its name.
Looks like a pit bull, right?
But you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's great. And the funny thing, I came back to Rochester. This was right around Christmas. We were having dinner at Rocco's, which I think is a really good place.
Yeah.
They had wolffish on the menu, and it was like, I don't know, $40. And, I didn't pay once for wolffish. And
Did you have the wolffish at Rocco?
no.
You didn't. Okay. I want to know how it travels. After we take our early break, we've got some questions from a number of folks who are wondering about a range of issues. First of all, someone on YouTube says they need to have a Nick Tahoe satellite location. No, I think they're doing just fine with what they got there. I
agree.
Now, if you're a vegan or if you're pescatarian, it's a lot of fish, as Lauren said. You get used to a lot of boiled fish. but I think they're doing just fine. Some questions on gun culture and crime in Greenland. Some more questions just on the relationship between the United States, Greenland. Some observations from our guests. Both of our guests have spent some time in Greenland. Dennis Defabaugh is a Guggenheim Fellow and Professor Emeritus in the RIT School of Photographic Arts and Sciences. Been there a number of times, lived there for the better part of a year and a half, and is going back at the end of this year. Lauren Petraka, freelance photojournalist, was there for a couple of weeks, covering a number of issues related to climate change about 5 years ago. And we'll come right back with more of your questions on the other side of this only break of the hour.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. Proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, focused on the news, issues, and trends that shape the lives of listeners in the Rochester and
Here we
Finger
come,
Lakes
Dennis.
regions.
Yeah,
BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com. Support for your public radio.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. All right, a couple questions on tourism here. I don't know how many Americans might be thinking about Greenland as a tourist idea, or how many people around the world with all the attention on Greenland. Again, it's a small, it's a small country. I mean, we talk about Greenland as a country. It's an independent region of Greenland, 57,000 people. David says, I was in Greenland on a cruise a few summers ago in August. We spent a few hours walking around a village on the east coast. We were asked not to purchase items in their grocery store because the locals depended on the items there, and they only received a couple of shipments per year. So, yeah, an interesting little look in there. So I imagine the cruise industry may pop in there. That's a little different than, hey, I want to go to Greenland for a week or 2 weeks like Lauren did. What would you tell people if they're thinking about that, Lauren?
Well, I'll say it's very expensive, first off. There was actually, for the first time, a direct flight added this year from Newark to Nuuk. So it's the first time there's been a direct flight from the U.S. to Greenland. So that maybe makes it easier. When I went, I had to fly to Copenhagen and then over to Kangerlussuaq and then hop on a flight to Ilulissat. So it's a lot of hopping on different flights. But also visiting there, they have, where I was in Ilulissat, they have breweries, they have, restaurants. There's not a lot, but, you can have a beer at this brewery while looking out at icebergs going by. It's incredible.
And Dennis, do you think that there is going to be even a small surge in tourism? I don't know if they have the infrastructure for it. Do you think that could happen?
I don't know if the misperception of Greenland kind of remains, then I don't think there's going to be a lot of tourism. But the more people that go there, the more impressed they are by the country, the landscape, and I know Lauren would agree, it's the most amazing landscape you're going to see anywhere. It's incredible. And it's unbelievable.
We're
really.
looking at some, again, if you're joining us on YouTube, Dennis Defabaugh's work, you're seeing some of it, and some of it just looks fake. I mean, it's just beautiful. The landscape that they're both talking about right now, this beautiful blue skies, flat, gorgeous light, and, as you said, having a beer, watching ice drift by in the water. It's just...
It's
Where
a good
else are you doing
feeling
that?
having a beer and looking.
I actually went on a cruise where they, not a cruise, but a little excursion into the icebergs on a boat, and they broke off ice from the water and made cocktails for us with it. Oh, that was pretty cool. But another thing I want to add is while I was there, a lot of the people I talked to, especially from Denmark, were visiting. They were either teachers or scientists who wanted to see climate change for their own eyes. So I met this one teacher I think she was at a middle school, and she went just to take pictures to bring back to her students to show them what's happening there. So there is a lot of tourism there around climate change, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to Dennis's point about them feeling like, the Greenlanders feeling like this has been a bad winter or an unusual winter because it's been so warm compared to what they're typically seeing. Fjords perhaps not even freezing over. I mean, a lot of change. Every year is going to be a little different. The president of the United States recently said, the South is getting a snowstorm. Where's that climate change? And I'm going like, man, that is a climate. What are we doing here? But what did you take home with you, Lauren? You're on assignment essentially thinking about climate change. You were living in Charleston at the time, South Carolina. So what were some of the takeaways for you on that particular project?
Just to see it with my own eyes was, I'm someone that I went into photojournalism because I wanted to cover issues related to climate change. So to see it was, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like when you're by a glacier and you can hear the ice breaking off from the ice sheet. It is like thunder. It literally sounds like thunder, and you can feel it in your bones. And it's like you just feel the effects of climate change. I don't know if I can really describe that better than that, but it was life-changing, and it changed me. And I already believed in climate change, but to see it with your own eyes is incredible.
And I wonder, in a moment like that, when you're hearing the cracking, you said it sounds like thunder.
Yeah.
Does it make you feel, for lack of a better word, small and sort of powerless to the force of climate change?
So small. Yes. And in terms of people there talking about climate change too, I will say that I did speak to some people who, everyday people who told me how it affects them. Like once I was out hiking and I met this young man collecting berries, and he said that, at this time he wasn't able to collect berries before because there would be ice. Or when I did get to hike out on the ice sheet, which was incredible, and the guide said he goes out there every day, and he just told us how much he's witnessed it melt from year to year. So, people there are definitely noticing it.
You agree with that, Dennis?
Yeah, just a couple examples. The book that I did dealt with, I was inspired by Rockwell Kent's time in Greenland. He was there in the early 30s, and he lived in Islorsvik most of the time, which is the furthest north that I lived when I was in Greenland. And you could look across the fjord, and it was just a long stretch, a panorama of mountains over there. There were 2 or 3 glaciers coming down into the fjords. And in Kent's photographs, those glaciers came all the way down to the fjords, and they were tall. Now the glaciers, they don't even make it to the fjord anymore. It's just running water with stones and rocks and everything. The glaciers are still there, but they've receded quite a bit.
Yeah, Connections listeners might remember last year we interviewed a journalist who took a journey to the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica. It's known as the Doomsday Glacier, because scientists fear that if it sort of breaks and melts, there's no telling what happens to the world. The follow-up piece that came out this past week about that, maybe we'll throw it in our show notes, has a concluding line that I just never expected to read. They're talking about geoengineering, and they're talking about building a 500-mile long, 50-foot wall to try to block a glacier melt. And it feels absurd when you read about it. But one of the scientists who was interviewed said, if the human species exists in 1,000 years on this planet, we will absolutely be geoengineering. It is how we will survive. And he said we might as well start now. Now, some of his colleagues disagreed, but that is something to think about. We don't think long-term as a species. 1,000 years on this planet is not long-term. For our species, it's very long-term. So just it's amazing. I'm just thinking about Lauren hearing the thunderous crack, and you go, wow, we are small. We are really, we've done some things, and we may not be able to stop.
I have a small story for you. This was in the spring. The whole town of Islorsvik was at the dock waiting for the first supply of the year to come in. Everybody was excited. We're all standing there, and we're getting eaten by mosquitoes like crazy. And actually, I should interject. Do you know why God put mosquitoes in Greenland?
No.
So it couldn't compete with heaven.
Is that a Greenlandic joke? Is that what they
Yes.
say? Yeah,
Yes,
I love
it is.
That's pretty good.
Right. But anyways, while we were there and they were starting to bring things in from the ship, here comes this kayaker up on the shore. And as soon as I saw him, I went down to him and I go, where are you coming from? And he goes, somewhere north of here. And I was asking him what it's like kayaking these fjords and the remote areas. And he said, like, I would wake up in the morning, I'm on an island, and I look across. I have all his devices that tells him where he's at and where he's going. And he goes, well, I can make it over to that island today. And he says he takes off rowing or paddling, and he's paddling and paddling and paddling and paddling. And he feels like I haven't even gotten close to this place.
Amazing.
And he says, you don't realize how far everything is and what it takes to get to any of these places.
Talking to Dennis Defebaugh and Lauren Petrarca about their time in Greenland. Back just a few more of your questions here. Let's see here. So Ben says, no question. I just wanted to say I have Dennis's book and just wanted to say I really enjoyed the photography in it. I think it might be a signed one. I picked it up last year at an antique and rare book convention over by the Calkins Road, Wegmans. You're in the rare book category now. Yeah. But Ben really appreciated that, really liked it. Caleb says, Evan, I saw somewhere that Greenlanders don't own land, but they own lots, kind of like a social program. Do your guests know more details on land ownership in Greenland?
They don't own land, and they don't own lots. They can get permission to build on the land. So you could have two houses, one in town and one out on the fjord or something, but you have to get permission to do that. And it's kind of nice, I would walk through people's property. Well, it's not their property all the time, and you don't worry about it. Nobody, thinks twice about it.
I didn't know that. I wish I did.
For your next trip, Lauren. Yeah. All right, so more from YouTube, so a number of questions there. What is the gun culture like in Greenland? My guess is that there are lots of guns and very little violent crime. Is that right? How do they do it? What do you know about Dennis? You were there longer.
That is right.
That's correct?
Yes. Almost everybody has a gun because most everyone's a hunter. A lot of guns are in really poor condition, but they still shoot, and they shoot straight, and they are really good shots. And the thing that you would not be used to for sure, if you're sitting on an airplane and here comes a person carrying a rifle onto the airplane, that happens all the time.
Yeah, no big deal, right?
Right.
Are you a hunter?
I have hunted when I was younger.
Did you hunt in Greenland?
No.
Okay.
No. I went fishing all the time.
Okay. All right. And also connected to this question is there much crime in Greenland?
I didn't see much. I don't know of much.
Yeah, I don't know much either, but I would assume, it's such small communities.
Yeah.
Everyone knows each other.
Right.
I would kind of assume.
Yeah.
Not, but I don't want to guess.
I think the crime is mostly like drunkenness or something like that. I don't know of anyone having something that was stolen.
So here's some other points. Got an email asking if we're going to see a Trump nuke or a Trump Greenland, like a Trump Tower, Greenland, like a Trump hotel. I don't think so. I don't think that even the Trump family probably thinks it's not the right investment. But you know what? I don't know anymore, guys. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know that that's the type of clientele that the folks who go stay in Trump properties around the world are probably not going. David, who wrote in before, said a lot of people go to Greenland for kayaking. I don't know that there's a ton of avid kayakers who live in tents who also stay in Trump properties around the world. So I don't know if that's a right fit, but I make no predictions. I don't know. Also on YouTube, a listener says, if Greenland were to be owned, quote unquote, by another country, it should perhaps be Canada. It's closer than the United States. Talking about Greenland becoming part of the U.S., this is crazy. It's insane. You'd be thought of as an idiot to even bring up such a crazy idea. Okay, I mean, right. I mean, so let's get back to this. One of the points Dennis made earlier is when you talk to people in Greenland, when you've been there multiple times, they didn't want to be part of the United States, but most of them also would like to not be a part of Denmark eventually.
Right.
They'd love to be fully
Right.
independent.
Yes.
You know, they have a prime minister and a parliament. They would like to be, they're autonomous, but they'd like to be recognized as an independent nation. And what is interesting to me is, despite the friction with Denmark, it looks to me like this has rallied the Greenlanders at least away from the United States and toward Denmark if they've got to be toward anybody else, Dennis. What do you see?
I think if you get right down to it, they don't want to be owned or controlled by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own parliament, but Denmark still has a lot to do with what goes on in Greenland.
Sure.
And part of it's because of finances. You know, I don't know if Greenland can even survive with their economy. You know, their biggest market is fishing. And I don't think you're going to run a country off of fishing.
I mean, I'm looking at your your high-up photos of Umanuk, and it's unbelievably beautiful. I'm looking through Dennis's book. But I wanted to find that one photo you had of, it said United States of Greenland on it.
It's in the front.
Okay. So, but can you explain the image here? I don't want to just talk about an image. It's
The United States of Greenland.
the flag. It's a flag.
Yeah. Oh.
What do you make of the fact that because this is 10 years ago, right? So someone puts
Yes.
a flag up and it says United States of Greenland. And I don't know if that meant at the time they'd rather be associated with the United States, or the relationship was good, or
No.
or what you thought.
It was facetious.
Oh, it was facetious. Oh,
and
no.
it's well, actually, that's the flag of Greenland.
Yeah.
The red and white, and then obviously
A few stars.
Stars,
Blue,
yeah.
white stars and
And
blue, yeah.
There's some great graffiti in Greenland, and it's really, I think, Banksy kind of inspired graffiti. But there's also other graffiti. Talk about how difficult Greenlandic is. There's a word that was written on the side of this building, and it was probably 15 to 20 yards long. And
One word?
yeah, one word.
Uh-huh.
And I asked my friend who was Greenlandic, what does that mean? And he goes, well, it's something like, it means I'm too lazy to do that.
Oh, man.
So the graffiti is a little bit all over the place.
Oh, boy. Down to our last minute or so. Lauren, as you continue to watch the story of Greenland unfold internationally, has it been surreal for you? What is it like having been there, one of the few Americans who's been there, seeing the way people talk about Greenland?
Yeah, I think Greenlanders are just left out of the conversation, which is hard to see. You know, they have this rich cultural history that's really important to them, and I think they need to be part of the conversation. I also Greenland is so important to the rest of the world in terms of climate change, and if any country is in there to go in there and strip it of its resources, and I think we're all in trouble. So I think that should be kept in mind.
Dennis, what do you think?
Well, I think the Greenlanders are intelligent people. They're educated. They're aware of what's happening in the world, but they're also aware of their environment and how to survive in that environment. And they love the environment. They love where they're at, and they don't want to live anywhere else, and they don't want to be controlled by anybody else.
Well, I appreciate some of the really the humanizing aspect. I mean, I'm searching for a better word, but I mean, my goodness, we keep talking about Greenland, or the international community is debating Greenland. The Trump administration is talking about it like it's just a place of resources to be mined, and its people and its culture. And as Lauren said, it is a very important place in the world for the safety and the future for all of us. So Thank you, Dennis Defabal, Lauren Petraka, for being here, for sharing your experiences, your photography, and your great work on this. And we do appreciate your voices. Thanks for coming on the show
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you, Evan.
Great conversation. More connections coming up in just a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.